pleasant surprise, on this occasion, he did show some restraint, because I think that there's a lot of goading going on. Well, if I finish my point, I think there's a lot of goading going on right across the region against Israel. Well, let me finish my point, then I'll get your response. When you see the activity of Hezbollah...
So basically, he showed a lot of restraint. He's talking about Netanyahu. He's talking about Israel. Israel showed a lot of sabr, patience, with Hamas and Hezbollah and all of these entities. And what they're doing right now is totally justified.
Of the Houthis, of what Hamas did on October the 7th, and what Iran then did in response to the attack on their consulate. There's a lot of deliberate provocation, I think, of Israel to try and goad them into an overreaction, which may then ruin their global support and sympathy. I mean, I would argue that that is at least a possibility, isn't it?
Well, first of all, it was the Israelis who started this by bombing the Iranian embassy in Damascus. The Iranians did not start this conflict that recently took place between April 1st and April 19th.
But they were there with people from Hezbollah, weren't they? So they were military leaders using the consulate to plan attacks on Israel with leaders of Hezbollah. I mean, that was why they were targeted.
Look, in international law and according to international norms, states don't attack the embassies of other states. This was considered to be a significant provocation.
Unless they're being used used as military bases, which it is believed, certainly Israel argues. No. I don't know, but it's certainly been argued by Israel that it was being used, part of this consular area was being used as a genuine military base, in which case it becomes a legitimate target if indeed they are meeting with Hezbollah to plan attacks on Israel, isn't it?
Okay, so before he will answer, John Mearsheimer, I just want to tell you this. Look at the hypocrisy. Piers Morgan, twice, okay, he claims himself that this embassy in Syria was used by Hezbollah twice. And he said, therefore, it became a legitimate target for Israel to do a airstrike in that consulate. When John Mearsheimer, he said that Israel started all of this. So then, after claiming that twice, Piers Morgan, then he's like, okay, now I'm talking to an expert, and he's going to really have some strong rebuttal. So let's say, I'm not saying it, it is Israel. This is what the argument from Israel, isn't it? Like, then why did you claim twice, saying that, no, it was a legitimate target used by Hezbollah twice? And then he said, oh, I don't know, but this is the argument from Israel, isn't it? Like, this guy is lying on camera, and he thinks we're so dumb and stupid that we will buy his story, and his ignorance is appalling. It's just appalling.
There's no evidence that it was being used as a military base.
Yeah,
and the fact is that if the Israelis are going to hit the Iranian embassy, the end result is the Iranians are going to retaliate. And they did retaliate. Now, I want to say a few words about that retaliation. It's very important to understand that the Americans and the Iranians orchestrated the Iranian attack so that it would be a limited attack. It would do very little damage to Israel. And the reason this is the case is that neither the Iranians or the United States wanted this conflict. And it was the Israelis who, by attacking the Iranian embassy in Damascus, dragged the Americans and the Iranians into this conflict. And what we tried to do, working with the Iranians before the attack on April 14th and during the attack on April 14th, was to do everything possible to keep it limited and avoid escalation.
Okay, and another thing that I just want to make sure is that you understand. So he said, Piers Morgan, a lot of goading going on, right? No, nothing at all. In fact, what we have known, Israel would conduct airstrikes in Syria and in Lebanon even way before October 7th happened. And they will, a lot of the time, kill innocent civilians, especially working in the airports, because they will target those airports that are being used by civilians, by passengers in commercial flights. And so when Piers Morgan is saying, oh, look at the Israelis, they're so victim, they are being provoked all the time by Hezbollah, by Iran. They do nothing, they have done nothing. Like they were like, yeah, we will just wait and, say, we are not going to be attacking them. We will just sit down and hope things will go away. No, never that happened. In fact, it was the Israelis who provoked Hezbollah, who provoked Iran, who provoked Houthis, all of these entities in the region for a very long time. And that happened because, obviously, with the support of US, they were supplying them with a lot of bombs and missiles and drones and everything, all the technology, so that this war machine will continue on. And it helps and benefits, obviously, the military industrial complex, because that way they are spending money buying arms and producing arms. And this is a huge, $1 billion, trillion industry, the arm industry. So this is how they continue on killing innocent civilian, attacking neighboring countries, or with this slogan of Israel has the right to self-defense. Unbelievable and very, very pathetic. Now I want to share with you this video from the same interview.
No. But that was the case in many cases.
That's not true.
Okay, so basically Piers Morgan here is arguing that the civilians are being targeted because it is going to be something that is inevitable in war situation. And Piers Morgan also argued that during the World War II, before these countries targeted civilians, they targeted government facilities, government sites. So his argument is like, no, we don't want to target civilians. And it never happens with Israel. They never target civilians. They target Hamas. But then what you can do, this is the rule of war, that you will have collateral damage and stuff like that. But here is how John Mearsheimer is responding to Piers Morgan. Take a listen. Very, very interesting.
Yes, it is.
No, I mean, what happened was that the British quickly found out, and this is what happened to us when we bombed Japan. We quickly found out that bombing economic and military targets didn't work. I could walk you through the story about the bombing of Japanese cities like Tokyo. It didn't work. And the reason we turned to bombing civilians, to killing civilians when we bombed Japan, and this was true with regard to Bomber Harris, is that bombing economic targets didn't work.
I found this conversation, as always, fascinating.
Now,
Professor.
he doesn't have any rebuttal, so what he do? Well, you guessed it right. He changed the topic, and now he's going to be asking another question, totally irrelevant.
Mearsheimer, I love having you on. It's been quite a downbeat interview, I have to say, for obvious reasons. Are you positive about the future of mankind, or are you selling at this stage?
I'm quite pessimistic about the future of international politics. I think if you look at what's going on in Ukraine, and you just think about the conversation that you and I were having, it's hard to think that the future doesn't look as depressing as the present and the recent past with regard to Ukraine. If you look at the Middle East, I mean, I see no hope there. This terrible situation is just going to go on and on. The Iran-Israel case that we talked about will pop up again in the future. And if you look into the situation in East Asia, what you see is that the US and the Chinese are engaged in this intense security competition where there's a real possibility of a war in the future over Taiwan or the South China Sea or the East China Sea. And then there are all sorts of other places you can look, like the Korean Peninsula, the border between India and China. And it seems like there's no end of potential war or potential conflict between the major powers in the system and even the minor powers in the international system. And then when you look inside states and you look at what's happening, if you look at what's happening to liberal democracy around the world, it's not a pretty picture. Look at the United States, look at Britain. Two of the paradigmatic liberal democracies, they're both in serious trouble. So I hate to say this, but I find very few reasons to be optimistic about the future.
Okay, so he did not mention about BRICS. He did not mention about petrodollar when it comes to the crisis for US and UK. But those things are inevitably going to damage, if not destroy, U.S.'s economy in the coming days. And U.S., the government, they're too busy with politics, who is going to run for 2024 and who should drop out. But Russia is coalescing with all of these countries, China, Turkey, and all of these Middle Eastern countries. And so, yeah, BRICS is going to come after you guys. We have seen Narendra Modi visiting Russia, and these people are getting along pretty well. The only president or the only head of states who are not getting along with the rest of the world are the European leaders and United States and Canada. So I think they need to wake up before they realize that it is all over. Israel, they sucked out all their blood economically, and so they really have nothing left. The juice is all gone. So Israel now will turn to whoever it will be to benefit their country, to make sure their existence is going smooth. The Zionist movement, the Zionist entity, the regime doesn't care about U.S. So if you're a U.S. citizen, I have some bad news. They don't care about U.S. They care about their